One of the victims of the anti-Semitic firebombing attack in Boulder has now died of her injuries nearly a month after that ambush. The suspect is facing a murder charge. It is possible he could be looking at the death penalty in a federal case. Boulder County District Attorney Michael Doherty confirmed his office charged the suspect with murder today because Karen Diamond, a victim in her early 80s, died as a result of her injuries last week. Diamond was participating in a peaceful event raising awareness for Israeli hostages in Gaza. DA Doherty says the state murder charge means the suspect could spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. And if the feds choose, the suspect could face the death penalty.
State law, we don't have a death penalty, but under federal law, we do. And now that a person has unfortunately died as a result of this attack, the death penalty is on the table at the federal level. Anti-Semitism right now is high in the public's consciousness. And so my guess is that a decision will be made fairly quickly because otherwise it takes many months for that process to play out.
Prosecutors say they have also filed new charges on behalf of 14 additional victims in the attack. That brings the number of victims to 29. Prosecutors say there were 14 of them who suffered physical injuries. Karen Diamond was a mother, she's a grandmother, a beloved member of her community. She was at that weekly march for the first time the day she was attacked. Our Mark Salinger shares more about her from some of the people who knew her best.
It's been nearly 1 month, a month of pain, a month of fear, and a month of fighting to survive. Today we learned 82-year-old Karen Diamond died after an anti-Semitic terror attack on Pearl Street on June 1st.
Horrific. Like the worst nightmare.
We met Rabbi Mark Soloway the day after Karen and a group of peaceful protesters were attacked with firebombs while marching to raise awareness for Israeli hostages in Gaza. Nearly a dozen people injured were part of his congregation.
Tragically, the person who is most seriously injured, it was their first time going on the walk. They decided that they wanted to join for the first time, and this happened.
Karen was a wife, a mother of 2, and a grandmother of 5. She was honored by the University Women's Club in Boulder in 2019 for her contributions to her community and for being a role model to other women. Today, they described her as loving, courageous, and welcoming.
We're like a big family, so we're all just feeling broken.
As her family and friends continue to mourn today and ask for privacy, we look back on the words they've shared about her and the other victims over the past month.
There was someone new who came on her birthday, and that's who was mentioned. That was probably the greatest victim.
I know these people personally. I've known them for a very, very long time. They're pillars of this community. They're friends.
Rabbi Mark Soloway, who you heard from there in Boulder, said today that there are no words to express the pain of this horrific loss of our beloved family member and friend. Karen died last week, and there was a private burial with her family. Okay.
We understand that a grieving family is always going to make their own choices about whether they want to talk publicly. In this case, there is a real level of heightened sensitivity about the way that some of these families have been treated by members of the media.
Absolutely, and that's why we chose to use some of those old sound bites and old interviews with the rabbi and friends that knew her as well. But there have been instances and situations over the past couple of weeks in which reporters have shown up, not from our station, but have shown up at people's houses, at victims' houses, calling the rabbi's cell phone or showing up at the rabbi's house. And that has obviously put everybody on edge in the middle of an already very challenging situation. That makes it that much worse. It's extremely understandable, obviously.
Sure.
They're asking for privacy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Privacy and security. Mark Salinger, thank you. The state is offering extra security funding for nonprofits with increased risks of threats, including synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship. Most of the money, $1 million, comes from a law passed in 2022 to cover security costs at nonprofits. This year, the state's tacking on an extra $250,000 for spots with urgent security needs. Nonprofits can apply for the funding through the state's security grant program. They're only eligible if they weren't granted funding from the federal program. So, a little side note here, unrelated to what's in the newscast. We have a relationship based on mutual honesty, of course. So I got to tell you, we are having some pretty serious technical issues here at 9 News Tonight. It's issues with playing video on the air, which would not be a big deal at most workplaces, but we're a television station. So I thought you would be amused to know
that behind the scenes here today, some of our wildly smart colleagues have actually rigged up this system in the other room with a pile of cameras all lined up, and they are people like physically hitting play on video cards every time we would usually play a piece of video for you here on air. This is probably the kind of stuff that you don't care about at all, except for the fact that you're watching next, so you're already a little bit weird. And tonight's program is going to be rough around the edges. I wanted to just say that up front so you know what's going on behind the scenes today. We'll try to make it as seamless as possible for you at home, but it will not be seamless. Speaking of things that aren't going real well, state of Colorado wants to claw back nearly $60 million in funding from public hospitals, many of them small rural hospitals that are already struggling to survive. That funding is likely going to be rediverted to private hospitals like UC Health because they just won a legal battle with the state's Medicaid agency.
The state just alerted 29 public hospitals across Colorado about these funding changes late last week. UC Health had sued the state over how 2 of its hospitals were reimbursed by the state's hospital provider fee. UC Health won that lawsuit, and the state is asking for money back from Denver Health and 28 other hospitals so that they can redo the math to pay UC Health and other private outfits.
We cannot lose any more hospitals in our system. We already have 25 counties that have maternal health care deserts. It impacts every Coloradoan in this state when we have hospitals that fail. There are hospitals like Denver Health, for example, that are going to lose out on $15 million, or smaller rural hospitals that could lose out from anywhere to $1 million to $5 million. They may end up closing their doors because of this situation.
So all these hospitals pay into a hospital provider fee. State uses that money to leverage federal matches. The hospitals that care for the most Medicaid patients are then supposed to get more reimbursement out of that fund. A lot of Colorado's rural hospitals are already feeling the financial pressure, especially as the Republican budget bill moves through Washington and threatens to cut Medicaid.
House Republicans have already passed new work and education requirements for able-bodied adults who are covered by Medicaid. The Senate is even further, including a provision that restricts states from taxing some health care providers to help fund Medicaid in underserved communities. It's not clear whether the proposed changes will make it through the Senate, as even some Republicans are split on the cost savings of it.
You catch that little giddy up there? We're doing our best. Hold on tight. Today, Senate Republicans tried and failed to pass an amendment that would decrease Medicaid funding to states like Colorado that allow coverage to women and children in the U.S. without legal authorization. This is all happening on the fast track because President Donald Trump demanded that his agenda be passed by Republicans in Congress no later than the 4th of July. So as we talk about federal funding cuts, I want to bring in meteorologist Chris Bianchi for kind of an extended conversation here before weather, because obviously, Chris, you're tracking day-to-day weather. You're also tracking how cuts to NOAA impact the work that you do to try and keep Coloradans safe.
Yeah, I think that's important, Kyle, to kind of delineate what is happening with Colorado weather. So let's start things off with the main impact. You've probably heard about this before. The main impact, there are no weather balloon launches. That means we send up weather balloons, 2 per day from 2 different sites on average, but those are no longer being sent up, which likely means that those weather forecast models are not getting the amount of data they typically receive. In long story short, that probably means that weather forecast overall decreasing a little bit, and that means reduced also National Weather Service offices. They're usually 24/7. However, a couple of offices, there are 4 here in Colorado. The Goodland office, which covers 3 counties in eastern Colorado, that one is no longer 24/7, and there's reduced overnight staffing at all the Weather Service offices here across the state. And there's no fire weather meteorologist. So if a fire were to pop up, usually there's a meteorologist there that is guiding firefighters about where to go. That, if a fire were to pop up, no longer will be the case due to budget cuts. But there's been a little bit of hyperbole. I want to kind of emphasize this. Forecasts and warnings are still 24/7. So I mentioned those offices, right? What happens now is that those offices kind of get reallocated, or there's kind of staffing needs that are filled. Weather forecasts are still mostly accurate, but more changes that are in the forecast, unfortunately, may not be good for the weather enterprise as a whole. We do have a few gusty showers south of Denver, and that 7-day forecast, best chance for storms this week will be on Thursday. 4th of July, though, trending on the drier side.
Appreciate the perspective, Chris. Thank you. So the number 3 Republican in Colorado State House is headed for the exit. He is moving out of state to take a new job. The story of soon-to-be former State Rep Brian Armagost really does encapsulate GOP politics in Colorado these days. Because Representative Armagost's biggest issue, his signature issue, is gun rights. He is leaving to go work for a gun rights group. But he recently became a target of a no-compromises gun rights group, which says that Armagost is not sufficiently supportive of gun rights.
Armagost, the House Minority Whip from Berthoud, announced today that he's resigning his seat effective September 1st. He says he's going to go work for a gun rights organization in Arizona. His replacement will be filled by a vacancy committee made up of party insiders who will appoint his successor. A significant minority of Colorado state legislators have won their seats through that very method. Armagost is the second legislator to resign just this month.
All right, let's talk about reasons why I love being with you here on Next. 1, when we are beset with technical difficulties, we get to be open about it. 2, when politicians lie, I don't have to pretend like it's the truth. And 3, because you make the world better weekly, especially our corner of it. Most recently, you raised more than $50,000 to support LGBTQ mental health projects through the nonprofit Envision You. Your Word of Thanks microgiving has now done $15 million worth of good all across our state, and we'll do it again on Wednesday. Send me ideas of nonprofits that are making an impact in your part of Colorado. Email next@9news.com. I read each and every email, or you can text NEXT at 303-871-1491.
ICE is no longer letting detainees. A prominent accessibility advocate who testified in favor of the governor's $29 million pedestrian now says he feels duped. He felt humiliated.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it felt humiliating.
He'll share the moment he realized he'd been roped into a bad idea. Next.
ICE will no longer allow detainees to appear for court in person in Adams County or Denver. They now have to show up by video. It's a huge shift in policy that the ADCO sheriff says is bad for everybody, defendants, victims, and the judicial process as a whole. The sheriff spoke with our Angeline McCall.
It's a system that's been in place for years. When detainees at the ICE detention facility have court, they usually get transferred for in-person court hearings to the county trying them.
We then pick them up and bring them and produce them to the courts for a hearing or a court case, and then we return them on completion of that court case back to where we got them from.
The process is called a writ, and it's been the same until late last week when Sheriff Gene Claps of Adams County received a notice he never expected.
The explanation of the letter that they were no longer going to allow agencies or certain agencies to be able to do writs any longer with any ICE agency or ICE detention facility.
ICE says the Adams County Sheriff's Office released inmates that should have been returned to their custody. Claps says he's aware of what cases they're referring to and asked ICE to provide him with those case numbers or names.
And like I explained to them, that they're putting a law enforcement, local law enforcement, into the middle of a huge conflict between the states and the federal government, where it's not us that's causing these issues.
ICE will allow detainees to appear virtually only, not in person, notifying not only Adams County, but also Denver County of the same policy.
What I see is this posing a huge problem to the judicial system and to victims and victims' rights of making sure that the suspect is actually there in front of them while the court proceeding is occurring.
Changes to policy, Claps says, is bad for defendants and victims.
You have all the victims, witnesses, and the offenders that have their day due in court that this is going to affect.
In a statement, the ICE Denver Field Officer Director says the relationship must be reciprocal, and if he's not confident an inmate will be returned, then, quote, I cannot in good conscience release that individual. Again, Claps wants to know what cases they're referring to when they say that their office did not honor these writs. Kyle.
That's the thing that I don't get. Like, is this coming from a specific case, like are Denver and Adams County disappearing people so that ICE can't find them?
So Sheriff Claps has asked, they said that in a conversation, ICE told him that it was related to 2 cases. He asked what cases, what are the numbers, what are the names? They have not provided that to him yet. He's asked for follow-up even today, did not receive that notice. We asked the same question of Denver County. Did they not honor writs? ICE said that recently they have honored writs. So, that leads to the question as to why are they included in this notice as well?
Well, ICE is picking fights with a lot of sheriffs for, well, I'm not going to say for publicity. It's getting publicity. Jeffco, ADCO, and now Denver. Something to watch. Angeline McCall, thank you. Listen, Errors and foul-ups happen. Sometimes a television station's video playback system fails catastrophically. And sometimes a governor tries to build a $29 million pedestrian bridge for no good reason. When we return, we'll hear from an accessibility advocate who testified in favor of the bridge and now says he feels humiliated and used. That's next. The governor's office is pushing ahead with plans for a $29 million pedestrian bridge project on the front lawn of the state capitol, despite struggling to find people who support that project. 2 people testified in favor of Governor Polis's bridge at a Capitol committee recently. One, a school teacher, declined to tell us on the record who had arranged for her to testify. The other person, a well-known accessibility advocate, reached out to me afterward to say that he felt humiliated and used by the governor's office. You've worked on accessibility projects around Denver for a long time.
Yes.
Do you regret testifying in favor of the governor's pedestrian bridge project?
Most definitely.
Stuart Tucker Lundy says the governor's office arranged for him to testify in favor of the $29 million pedestrian bridge project by appealing to his years of work advocating for accessibility. Lundy says it wasn't until he was in the committee room that he realized that accessibility was an afterthought of the governor's legacy project, just one of many shifting reasons offered for the project as it's faced public scrutiny.
But as I sat there, I knew I had messed up.
You realized in the room?
Oh, yes. Most definitely.
Lundy called me the next day to say he felt humiliated and used.
But I did feel used a little bit. Like my blackness, I know optics, Kyle. I know optics. I know right now with the fact of me sitting in this chair as a 57-year-old black man, a black man in a wheelchair, that carries a lot of attention. It carries a lot of responsibility. And I know that.
He said he worries his testimony convinced committee members to advance that project he now sees as a waste of money, to the point that he wants to apologize if he influenced their votes.
And, to be quite honest, the Madam Chair, I want to apologize to her because I looked her dead in her eye and I saw where she had empathy. That was her vote, the empathy.
You aren't going to blame yourself if they build this thing, are you?
Oh, God, yes. Yes, I would, because it's not necessary.
Do you think you're going to catch blowback for coming out and saying this?
Probably. But you know what? That's why America's good. I love America because I know what's wrong and know what's right in my heart.
Next stop for the bridge proposal is a committee that oversees projects at the Capitol. Say full disclosure, in a commentary here on Next last week, I've referred to the project as a monument to government waste. If you're interested in seeing our full 6-minute deep dive on the bridge project, it's posted at 9news.com and on the Next YouTube channel. See, Marilyn, you go to either of those places, you push play and the video plays.
Yep.
Unlike 9 News Today, you push play on YouTube and the video plays. Well, you stuck with us all the way. Thank you. Your feedback is next. Feedback from Jim, who's upset that I'm criticizing Governor Polis. Jim wrote, quote, "Curb your negatives." Well, Jim, if you're looking for a TV station that is afraid to criticize the governor or some other political party, you can find those options up and down your TV dial, but that's not how we operate. Up and down the TV dial is kind of a throwback phrase, kind of like what we were doing with our video production here tonight. Kind notes about that from Joel, Melody, Michael, among others. Chuck says, nice work going back to the 8-track production. Are the commercials on cart? My very first radio job, I'd have to stack up the cart commercials, carry them down the hallway before the baseball game. I'd always drop them, have to restack them really quick. It's very nerve-wracking, kind of like this.